Good day to all. Welcome to Extreme Recap. During his getaway in London, a sluggish lasagna-cherishing feline should help another cat indistinguishable from him safeguard his legacy from an aggressive and savage ruler. Today we recap the tale of the 2006 film Garfield, two on the edges of an illustrious royal residence in Britain, day-to-day routines a spoiled heckled sovereign who lives encompassed by every sort of extravagance under the sun. His food is ready and served by many representatives. He has private back rub meetings and, surprisingly, the sand he wants is followed through on a silver plate on the opposite side of the world. There is a feline very much like him who isn't a lord, however feels like one. Garfield lives with a human named Jon, a meek little canine named Odi, and has digital television lasagna and his own rocker. One day when the creature gets back, it finds an unusual design on the floor with flower petals dissipated all over. Nonetheless, he doesn't give a lot of consideration to this until Jon approaches and makes a statement followed by a proposition to be engaged. Garfield is scared, however, as a general rule, Jon was rehearsing the proposition he will make when his sweetheart shows up for a heartfelt supper. The thought doesn't satisfy the feline who pushes over Lizzie's photograph and switches the music, making his gatekeeper go ballistic and spill wine on his shirt. Subsequent to getting himself together, Jon welcomes Liz at the entryway. He's going to propose when she enthusiastically uncovers that she will go to a cause occasion for the Britain Creature Government Assistance Group. So she'll have to venture out to London the following day. This news screws with the young fellow's arrangements for the night, which is possibly exacerbated when Garfield shows that he has concealed the ring from his gatekeeper's pocket. Delight is excited with the embellishments Jon has made for supper, yet she wants to return home and pack for the outing. Then she leaves subsequent to kissing her beau. Farewell. Indeed, even without having proposed and with Garfield stuffed from having even all the supper without anyone else, Jon isn't deterred and chooses to head out to London to amaze records. Again, this thought doesn't satisfy Garfield 1b. To exacerbate the situation, Jon chooses to take the feline and Odi to a veterinary center where the two will remain while he is away amidst his cries of re. Garfield figures out how to open the Kendall's barbecue, escapes from the spot alongside Odi, and both get once more into Jon's vehicle, concealing in the storage compartment back at the Regal royal residence following the memorial service of woman Eleanor Carlyle. The attorneys start perusing the will outside the window. The creatures of the spot converse with one another, stressed over who will acquire the lady's home. The first to be named is the steward of the house Smithy, who turns into the gatekeeper of the domain. Having the option to live in the palace however long he needs while dealing with the creatures that his special lady adored to such an extent. Then, at that point, the time had come to name the main beneficiary of the multitude of women property. The master named Manfred Dimnus. Furthermore, who was her nephew, ventures forward, trusting himself to be the new proprietor of the palace. In any case, shockingly, the genuine successor is the feline ruler. Both the feline and different creatures in the palace are excited at the information, while murkiness lets completely go and goes after the legal counselor. In any case, he gets a hold of himself when he is educated that when sovereign perishes, the bequest will pass to him. Outside the palace, a few vacationers are acquainted with the site by an aide, and some of them requested to take pictures. Right when ruler Dargis was cruising by, be that as it may, what they truly needed was to photo the genuine proprietor of the palace. For this situation, the feline that was passing by at that point in his carriage, which makes the master rankled inside the castle. Ruler declares to his creature companions that they will constantly have a spot to live as long as he possesses the bequest. In any case, the canine, Winston, cautions his lord, saying that the ruler plans to take everything for himself. In any case, the heir doesn't trust this. Sadly, the canine was correct and sovereign is caught by Dargis, who traps the creature in a crate and tosses it into the waterway, trusting the feline will suffocate. In the meantime, Jon shows up in London and subsides into a similar lodging where Liz is remaining when she figures out her sweetheart is there. The young lady is glad to meet him and he again attempts to propose. In any case, at that point, his bag opens without help from anyone else. Furthermore, to the couple's astonishment, Odia shows up alongside. At the palace, the weasel Nigel seems to illuminate different creatures that Master Dargis has tossed sovereign into a crate in the stream Preston. The macaw attempts to exploit what is happening and selects himself as the new replacement to the privileged position. However, Winston concludes that he and different creatures should explore what befell the feline and figure out what the master is doing at the inn. Jon and Liz plan a visit through London locales, while Odie and Garfield should remain in the room. In the meantime, Smithy looks for Ruler, and when he shows up where Dargis is rehearsing sport shooting, he inquires as to whether he has seen the feline. The master says no and fakes concern, yet before long redirects the conversation by requesting that the steward get his garments in a demonstration of brutality. The reprobate points his firearm at the creatures that were close by. Yet, Smithy keeps him from shooting them as they had a place with woman Eleanor. Exhausted at the lodging, Garfield and ODI exploit the housekeeper, making the way for clean up the room and take off meandering the roads of London. The two visit different locales while looking for Jon and Liz. The little canine even figures out how to make an illustrious watchman fly off the handle and pursue them in the wake of doing his necessities thing on the man's leg. Having neglected to find Jon, Garfield is going to abandon his central goal when he is nearly hit by a vehicle which was being driven by Smithy. Seeing the feline indistinguishable from Ruler, the steward takes the creature who attempts to oppose, however adjusts his perspective when he sees the meat pie toward the rear of the vehicle rapidly. ODI attempts to arrive at his companion, yet can't. All of a sudden the genuine sovereign rises up out of the sewer. Having endured the master's arrangement, he then, at that point, requests that ODI return him to the palace. Incidentally, at that point, Jon shows up on the scene and mistakes him for Garfield, seeing the feline all messy. The man chooses to return to the lodging to give him a shower. Meanwhile, the genuine Garfield enjoys meat pie in the vehicle, while Smithy takes him to the palace. With Ruler's vanishing, Master Obscurity burns through no time, calling the attorneys to illuminate them that he is woman Eleanor's new heir, which raises doubts about the creature's vanishing. Likewise, the master calls a financial backer named Abby to introduce his arrangement for the palace on a model. He shows her that he expects to make a place of interest on the home, incorporating eliminating the forest in the corral. Convent asks what will befall the creatures. Furthermore, he says just that. They will act as a dinner for the visitors of his place of interest. A brief time frame later, Garfield shows up at the manor. Also, in spite of being dazzled by the size of the spot, it doesn't take him long to sink into his new quarters. Winston the canine shows up to invite him and takes him to meet different creatures amidst his necessities. The feline simply delivers a clever discourse and withdraws, permitting everybody to obviously understand that he isn't the genuine sovereign. To exacerbate the situation, the mouse Claudius shows up, advance notice everybody about Master Murkiness. Detestable arrangement in Winston proposes that regardless of whether that isn't the genuine feline, the creatures ought to safeguard him, as then the bad guy will reserve no privilege to the palace. At the inn, Jon completes washing Prince and the feline says he really wants assistance returning to his palace to save his subjects. Is totally disregarded. In the meantime, Winston attempts to persuade Garfield that he is important for sovereignty and ought to remain at the palace where he will have all the extravagance, solace and obviously, a lot of food. The feline then chooses to remain and starts to partake in every one of the solaces his new home offers. Notwithstanding, as Ruler Dargis completes his last exchanges with the financial backer, he sees Garfield in the palace and thinking he is sovereign feelings of trepidation his arrangement has been destroyed. The miscreant then sends the financial backer away rapidly and questions Smithy about the catlike's return. Subsequent to affirming this data, the master carefully takes a knife and goes searching for the feline. Yet, before he can hurt him, Garfield proposes to Winston that they make the palace more tomfoolery and starts going around the lobby, pushing over costly containers and fine arts. One of them even winds up pounding Obscurity. Discontent with everything going on, he again contacts the legal counselors who will show up on Monday to discuss the will. Haziness acknowledges he should rush to stop the feline or he will lose his right to the legacy in the future. He barely misses losing his fingers as well. At the point when the palace creatures put a mouse trap on his table, pounding his hand, the animals then educate Winston regarding what's happening, and he concludes that despite the fact that the new ruler is pretentious and irritating, they ought to guard him until Tuesday, which is the point at which the legal counselors will have figured out the legacy issue. In the meantime, Garfield keeps on making changes to the palace, however Ruler Dargis devises another arrangement to polish him off by delivering the Rottweiler Sprinter inside the palace to go after him. Then he utilizes the feline's cushion so the canine can track it down and crush it with his teeth. In any case, Winston and different creatures show up with perfect timing to stop Sprinter expressing that there are no felines there. Furthermore, they take some most obscure genes and begin playing with the creature. Minutes after the fact, while accepting that his arrangement had worked, the ruler tracks down the Rottweiler in the house and salutes him. Nonetheless, seeing that he was wearing similar genes, Winston showed him the canine assaults him. In the meantime, the genuine sovereign starts to encounter the great side of life as a common. In a bar, he attempts lasagna interestingly and before long becomes hopelessly enamored with the dinner. The feline sinks its face into the plate to eat all the lasagna, dirtying everybody around it, including Jon. Yet again who attempts to propose to Liz, however flops far away. Garfield gets a Regal feast, however rejects the food and orders his subjects to get ready lasagna for him. The creatures attempt to cook, however they don't have the foggiest idea about the recipe and make total confusion in the palace kitchen. The feline shows up at the spot and in the wake of seeing all that wreck, the creature shows everybody how to set up a scrumptious lasagna with the assistance of his new companions. Garfield readies a dish so tasty that it prompts a battle to conclude who triumphs, ultimately the last piece back at the inn. Ruler is so happy with the lasagna that he doesn't recollect his main goal to get back to the royal residence. In any case, when Liz needs to go to the gathering and drops a handout, ODI hands the paper to the feline. Subsequent to opening it, the creature tracks down the guide of London with the area of his palace. Ruler then moves through the room window and expresses farewell to Odie. However, winds up slipping and falling on the opposite side. Fortunately, he is safe and embarks to track down the castle. Nonetheless, Jon understands his feline has pursued away and pursues him. Showing up at the stream he saw on the guide, Ruler leaps off the extension into a boat to hitch a ride. In the meantime, Ruler Dimness is getting ready to finish up his business with nunnery, yet is alarmed to see the pool overwhelmed by creatures. The reprobate attempts to get everybody out, except winds up having a couple of mishaps in the focal point of London. Jon attempts to ask Scotland Yard, the city's police, for help in tracking down Garfield, yet they are not exceptionally able to help him. In the meantime, Ruler, Obscurity attempts once more to help the canine Sprinter to follow his arrangement to polish off the feline unequivocally. All of a sudden, Smithy shows up on the scene and the master attempts to camouflage his arrangement. Also, to move him, he arranges the steward to take some time off. What's more, despite the fact that he would rather not do that, Smithy settles in the city of London. Jon and Odie attempt to track down Garfield, yet are fruitless. Nonetheless, the little canine finds a paper on a streetcar and shows it to his proprietor, who sees the image of the genuine feline on a news thing. Jon then accepts that somebody has confused Ruler with Garfield and chooses to go with ODI to Carlisle Palace to search for him at the Imperial Castle. Lizzie's with different speakers for the gathering that will happen soon. She doesn't actually think that in a similar spot, Garfield is skating through the passageways. The creature then stops to pay attention to Winston and Preston contending in one of the rooms. Listening unobtrusively, Garfield understands that the two are simply involving him and that in all actuality he gets no opportunity of having a place with sovereignty. Subsequent to hearing this, the feline leaves the palace hurt. Simultaneously, Smithy gathers his bag for a getaway and strokes an image of Ruler, while Jon rents a vehicle and starts his excursion with ODI to find his feline actually wounded by the unforgiving words he heard from his creature companions. Garfield stops before the canvas of one of the Carlisle family precursors and sees the substance of his gatekeeper, Jon. Seeing that he was childish to leave him, the creature will pursue him. In the meantime, in the palace chambers, the aide keeps on acquainting the speakers with the spot. Unexpectedly, Murkiness shows up, claiming to help the reason for ecological insurance and even attempts to play with Liz. Notwithstanding, Garfield shows up without a moment to spare and stands out for the master so he avoids Jon's sweetheart. Sadly, the man figures out how to catch the feline and leaves him caught in a cell in the prison that lies underneath the palace. Not long after, Ruler appears and gets increasingly close to his palace, hitching a ride with a truck to arrive quicker. Simultaneously, Jon and ODI are likewise heading there at the royal residence. The legal counselors at long last show up to finish the will. Also, with the sovereign gone, there is no other option except for to give up every one of the resources for the legitimate heir. Ruler Dargis caught in his cell. Garfield starts to give a sensational discourse without holding back, which ended up being valuable as the creatures in the palace figured out how to track down him. So the mouse and the canine, Winston opened an entry for Garfield to get away. However, the feline is as yet harmed that he was deceived by his companions just to keep him in the palace, claiming to be the ruler. All things considered, he has had to deal with Garfield. No longer needs to be eminence and simply needs to return to his home. In any case, while leaving the castle, he winds up gathering the genuine sovereign in the nursery. The regal feline then, at that point, makes sense of all that occurred and even encourages his twofold to get back home, as Jon is a brilliant coach. Notwithstanding, when the palace creatures made sense of the circumstance, Garfield chooses to remain to assist them with overcoming Ruler Dargis for the last time. Notwithstanding, the arrangement can work in the event that they function collectively before the palace. The Rottweiler is on watch, yet Garfield baits him away as Sovereign gets through the entryway. At the point when the canine attempts to get up to speed, the cat shows up with his bull companion and the two pursue Sprinter far away. In the interim, Ruler Haziness is working out the last subtleties of the will with the legal advisors. Nonetheless, when he sees Sovereign's shadow strolling around the room, he requests that they leave rapidly, going out searching for the feline. The lowlife winds up tracking down Convent, who shows up at the specific second to close the exchange of the place of interest. The master then attempts to take her to one of the rooms, however Ruler shows up and he quickly attempts to lose her as he probably is aware that assuming she figures out that the genuine successor to the palace is as yet alive, the arrangement will be dropped. The feline keeps on prodding obscurity, who attempts to get it no matter what. Nonetheless, the creature figures out how to bait him into his room. Furthermore, when the ruler hops on the bed to catch him, the smash releases the rope that held the covering, which winds up falling on him. After the mishap, the reprobate keeps on chasing after him, however the feline breaks through a mysterious lift in the wall. Murkiness attempts to contact him by going down the stepping stool that slips on the shelter appended to his garments. At that point, nunnery again arises, it is proceeding to ask what. Be that as it may, the man concocts a rationalization and requests that she keep holding up in the room. Tired of being deceived by the feline, the ruler snatches a weapon from the wall to polish him off, yet winds up stumbling over the leg of one of the passage protective layers and getting concealed in the head with a safeguard. While he is oblivious, the ducks emerge from their protective layer and the felines bait the miscreant into the nursery where he winds up running into the Rottweiler, who, after seeing that his proprietor is wearing similar jeans, begins pursuing him as he attempts to escape. The creatures start to go after him by terminating the plates of the objective game as the master tumbles to the ground. Powerless, Ronner shows up lastly figures out how to chomp his jeans off. In the meantime, Smith is hanging tight for his taxi on a seat out and about. At the point when Jon shows up in his vehicle and inquires as to whether he has seen the feline from the image in the paper right away, the steward affirms by saying that that is the sovereign of Carlisle Palace. Jon then, at that point, says he accepts this feline has been confused with Garfield and requests Smithy's assistance in tracking down him back at the palace. Obscurity shows up in the lounge area totally broke. What's more, when the attorneys find him, they request clarifications. The ruler simply says that regardless of what he does, he can't kill Sovereign in that frame of mind of distress. The man takes out a crossbow that was in the spot and compromises them all, saying that the legacy will be his in any case. At that point, Abby shows up and is caught by the master, who finds that she was additionally working with the legal advisors to find the antiheroes. Genuine plans. Abruptly, Ruler and Garfield show up on the scene and attempt to redirect most obscure consideration. In any case, he doesn't mean to surrender. Luckily, Jon shows up at the royal residence and ODI quickly races to chomp the antihero's butt, making him drop the crossbow that winds up in Jon's hands. Everybody begins chuckling at the man, however the festival is brief. As Liz shows up in the room and the ruler figures out how to catch her, compelling Jon to drop his weapon. In any case, the felines actually have another ace in the hole and call Nigel the Weasel, who gets into the lowlife's jeans and starts messing with him. Jon then, at that point, takes advantage of the opportunity and hits Haziest directly upside the head, who tumbles to the ground oblivious, accordingly finishing the disarray. Right now, Garfield and Ruler command their triumph by Pad and Preston in the face, who likewise attempted to exploit what is happening by complimenting the felines to get a situation on the court. At long last, Smith shows up on the scene, joined by 2 watchmen who bring the Ruler to prison. With everything settled, Jon at long last chooses to request that Liz wed him. Yet, once more, he doesn't track down the ring in his pockets. In any case, at that point, Garfield, in an indication of fellowship, hands the ring to Jon and he makes the solicitation, which resides promptly acknowledges the creatures, then attack the spot and the festival happens in the pool where Garfield partakes in some greater amount of the stewardship that the royal residence offers prior to getting back with his loved ones. Turn on notifications, please subscribe for more videos like this, and like the channel to support it. Thank you very much for watching.